So what we're starting with today is just our course catalog, and I'm going to go through this quickly today. And this is what we're going to be focusing on a majority of today's presentation when we actually get into the demonstration of the platform and the lesson plans, and that's our STEMit series. The STEMit series is K through 12. We're going to see STEMit Elementary today, STEMit Middle School, and then on the next page here, STEMit High School. And what these programs provide is a library of digitally interactive and as well as hands-on learning opportunities that are tied to all subject areas K through 12 and help teachers not only tie in those core subject standards, but also bring in some truly authentic learning experiences through STEM. So what you're seeing on my screen here is our welcome screen, what we're calling our teacher dashboard. This is where your teachers would log in and they're able to access all of their StemFuse content directly from this platform. So with that being said, I'm going to dive in here to a few of those different lessons. And today we're just going to focus on the STEMit areas, those cross-curricular K through 12 lesson plans designed to be used in a distance or blended learning environment. But you're going to notice that we have access or a variety of our different courses to review and play around with. So I'm going to go and start with here just elementary. We're going to go in order of grade level: elementary, middle school, and high school. So we're going to start with our STEMit Elementary program. STEMit Elementary is broken down into grade levels K through 2 and 3 through 5. So what I'm going to do today is just go into this start unit and show you how, using a few of our teacher's guides here, you're able to plan for different lesson plans using the core subjects taught in K through 2 and 3 through 5. So I'm going to go to start unit, and I'm going to pull up our topic guide as we get started today. And I'm just going to collapse this left sidebar here. So using this topic guide, what this is going to show me now is how these different lesson plans are broken down into grade levels. So we saw K through 2, we saw the units 3 through 5 on the previous screen. Inside each of those grade levels, we have the 4 core subjects. So we have English, science, math, and social studies, meaning we have projects now for those subject areas that are tied to those subject standards. As we continue through this topic guide, we're then able to see those standard areas and where we can bring this STEMit elementary program into our existing curriculum. So English, for example, K through 2, your teachers are teaching prepositions, autobiographies, and poetry. This will be recognized by them. They will have to have some lesson plans around these areas as part of their distance or blended learning curriculum. So what we're providing then is ways to bring some hands-on or unplugged learning into the existing curriculum, meaning they will not need technology for some of these lesson plans, which they can be doing completely on their home or at their home, without the need of that technology, as well as a lot of virtual or digital lesson plans that they can be doing on those devices that you're providing to them. So we're going to touch on the difference here between how you can help students, whether or not they have technology, and what that learning would look like and how it ties into prepositions today. As we continue through the rest of these subject areas, we're going to notice a very similar outline, and I'm not going to touch on what all of these different areas mean. I'm going to show you that later. But you're going to notice a variety of different lesson plans, but they're all outlined very consistently. So by that I mean prepositions, we see a STEMit challenge. We see code it 3D printing. With mathematics, same idea, same outline. We have a STEMit challenge here, coding, 3D printing. And the topic is obviously different, right? We're in mathematics, numbers, and counting here. So we're going to use very similar STEM projects to reinforce the core subject in a very consistent manner, making it very easy for teachers and students to pick this up quickly. As we scroll through and get into grades 3 through 5, you're going to notice the same exact outline, those same 4 core subjects. The only difference here being the standards that we're tying these STEM projects and technology and unplugged projects into. So English transitions away from prepositions, as we saw at the kindergarten level, to elements of a story, cause and effect, and then parts of speech. Mathematics, same thing, just transitioning into grades 3 through 5 in standard aligned topic areas relating to math, science, and social studies. So as we saw that topic guide and we see grades K through 2, we see grades 3 through 5 here on the left side. We're able to navigate into subjects using the left side now. So for example, grades K through 2, we wanted to explore prepositions for today's first example. So if we went into grades K through 2, English, selected prepositions, we can just jump right in now to the learning exercises that we have access to. So now we're within K through 2, we're within English, we're within prepositions. Now we have access to those student-facing lesson plans and some teacher-facing planning tools. So we're going to use the teacher-facing teacher's guide here to get started today. And what this is going to show us now, and I'm going to make it bigger for us again, is how to facilitate these lesson plans. So we saw the topic guide, which gives us the entire outline of the program. These teacher's guides now do a really good job of specifically helping you prepare for the lessons that are tied or within this particular topic area. So as we go into this teacher's guide now, notice how it's going to be very visual for you as a teacher. Notice how it's going to guide you through some of the different lesson plans. But we're going to dive into this challenge here in a second, and we're going to see 5 different areas of learning here for our students. We walk you through each of those areas of learning, showing you the standards that are tied to this, any possible standard you could think of, whether it's a core subject, next gen science engineering, CSTA, computer science. We're tied to every possible standard, whether it's STEM or core, that you could possibly imagine. So if you explore this later today, or your teachers dive in and you have some questions on standards, you can contact us, our standard team. The rest of this teacher's guide now does a really good job of walking you through. So I'm going to go back up really quickly. We see these 5 different lesson plans here labeled for you, 1 through 5, standards that are tied to it. Now walking the teacher through what the students will be doing through each of those lesson plans. You're going to see teacher's notes. You're going to see estimated time of completion for each of those 5 individual lesson plans. So I'm going to walk you through how those lessons would work, how you could use them in a distance or a blended learning environment. So each of these is broken down, as we saw in that topic with the STEM challenge. We have coding projects as well, and then 3D printing projects. I'm going to quickly run you through these 3 areas, and you'll get a quick understanding of how we're able to use this to teach prepositions in this particular case. So I'm going to make my screen full. And this is that engineering challenge with those 5 different lesson plans. So the whole focus here is on teaching students prepositions. So if I was a teacher using this in a distance learning environment, if we have the opportunity to go in class for maybe a class day, maybe you're going 3 days off, 2 days in the classroom, you could lead this in front of the class or pull up your Zoom or whatever virtual meeting tool you're using. And we're going to walk through activity 1 with our students. So activity 1 is simply reviewing the core subject that we're talking about. So this one's all about prepositions. You're going to notice consistency. So we're always going to be talking about prepositions throughout all of these different projects I'm going to show you within this topic area. So if I was leading this with my students, I would say, okay, students, where are the books? And you can have your students zoom in and talk to you, or they can just sit down and type in the text. All we're trying to do here is get them to start to use some prepositions as they're identifying the different location of these objects. So try to make it as interactive as you possibly can in a digital virtual meeting or something like that, and just have the students interact with you. And as you select these different boxes, it's going to highlight them in the room. So you're going to notice a ton of interactivities included within these lesson plans, making it engaging for your students, even if you're simply leading the lesson. Next is some visualization. I'm going to go through this quickly today, but we're going to see drag and drop the dog between the trees. So once again, we're focusing here on prepositions. We want to use this platform to locate the dog, so we can joke around with our students and say, students, is this between the trees? And we can put the dog near the doghouse or in the doghouse. The students would all laugh, or they'd say no. We'd then be able to put the dog between the trees, and now we see, okay, that's correct. So we're giving the students now the visual connection to the prepositions we want them to know. There's a bunch of different examples here that I'm going to skip for the sake of time, as you get the idea of what we're trying to accomplish here in that first lesson. Lesson 2, we're going into the engineering design cycle. So now this is really where STEMit was built around. It is this activity 2 in this design process. So every single STEMit lesson, we're going to take a look at middle school and high school examples too today, will use this design cycle. So if we're able to understand as teachers that this design process is not specific to engineering, even though it's labeled the engineering design process or design cycle, it's designed here to help solve problems. That's all it is. So we think about a variety of different subjects that we're teaching our students. They're always trying to solve different problems. What we use this design cycle for is a way to document that process. And this is extraordinary for distance or blended learning, because it allows students to document their thinking process where normally they wouldn't, or you as a teacher would not be able to see that. Even in classroom learning, teachers can struggle with understanding the student's thought process. So this helps us identify those areas here. And this starts with a quick video on introducing the students to engineering, and then we go through that process. So at the K-5 level, all we want our students to understand is the 6-step process. So this would be another teacher-led lesson plan here. in which you want our students just to understand this process. So I'm going to walk through this with you quickly. Step one of this design cycle here is to define the problem. Step two is brainstorm. You can collaborate. A lot of our tools are going to be digital, like using digital docs, so students can collaborate even if they're not in the same classroom together. Step three, planning based on what we're learning or based on what we thought would be a good idea in that imagined step. Step four, taking those resources, designing that first prototype. Step five, testing that. Does our design here solve the problem? If not, we go back to imagine, okay, what did we learn? Test it again. Does it solve the problem? This time it does. Fantastic. We then present our solution to the class. This ends with a visualization or charting activity here. I'm just going to go through this quickly for us, and we're able to move on. Before we get into the engineering challenge, I'm going to show you just some unplugged activities here. So activity 3, these are resources your teachers can hand out to students. Simply selecting the activity brings up the instruction for the teacher. This is also located in those teacher's guides that you can download and print and have the instructions in front of you as a teacher without having to go into this lesson. Giving you the instructions and simply giving you that resource allows you then to download, print, and then make these accessible through handouts to your students. So at this point in these 5 different lesson plans, we've introduced the students to digital learning through this platform. Now we want them to tie it all together. So this is where true STEM learning comes into play. And this is now how we tie STEM directly into what our students are learning in different K through 5 or really K through 12 classrooms. So now we get into this challenge, and I mentioned to you, these are preloaded scenarios for your teachers. So what we're going to do here is just start with a scenario. So I'm going to present this scenario to them. They will not really need a lot of time on technology or virtual meetings for this particular lesson plan, as they can lead this lesson on their own once we position this scenario to them. And even our younger students are able to grasp this. So using a variety of different prepositions, we can use in, under, below, as we test and present our designs. I'll pull up the journal here once we're done and show you what that would look like. But the students are documenting their process during each of these 6 steps, writing down what they're accomplishing, and we have pre-made digital and as well as handout journals for them to complete. Then get on another Zoom call with our teacher. We can send them our digital journals. We can hand in our journals to the teacher next time we see them, and we can then present our designs to the class or to our teacher, virtually or once again in class. And focusing here all on those different prepositions. Does our boat hold weight? Does our passenger stay in? Are our passengers above, or did they go below or under? Using all the prepositions that we've introduced our students to. So going back into that prepositions topic area, I'm going to pull up that journal for you to take a look at here so you can get an idea of what your students will be completing throughout that process. But your students would be able to write down sentences, draw pictures, add images in this digital journal, or links when we get into the middle school or high school when they're doing some outside research. It allows them to document their process from start to finish. You'd have a digital version, or you'd have the, I'm going to go back in, or you'd have the printable one, which would once again be downloadable and you'd be able to hand out to your students. As part of these as well, you as teachers will have access to full grading rubrics. What we're trying to do is get your students to understand the connection from the core subject to the hands-on learning activities that they'll be completing within those challenges. Next, we're going to take a look quickly here at coding activities. These are 100% done on devices and can be student-led as well. And the goal with these coding projects is to introduce students to computer science and communicating back and forth with computers. So building some real skill sets there in computer programming, critical thinking areas, creativity as well. But the end product, the final game in this case that they design, once again, will tie into prepositions. So everything we're developing here, whether it's the engineering process, whether it's coding here in this example, or the next example I'm going to give you in 3D printing, everything that we're designing or developing with our students using STEMit will tie into those core subject standards. The details or the software that they're using here, very step-by-step for them. So each step 1 through 11 here, we're using the software called Scratch. I'm just going to pull it up so you can see it. So students would follow along with the instruction using Scratch, and they're going to be developing here a game in which they're giving prepositions for this little boy's room. So giving prepositions for these different objects, and they're learning how to program and type in those prepositions. So you're going to see the video audio here for step 2, text, screenshots. As we continue to go through each of these steps 1 through 11, the same set of instructions here for your students. So this remix verbiage is directly from the CSTA Computer Science Framework K through 5. So STEMit, as we saw, is available for every subject, every grade level, K through 12, designed to help those teachers bring in a virtual or even unplugged. We saw a lot of these can be done within the home without a lot of materials needed to complete these designs, without even technology being required for a majority of these lesson plans. So whether your students have access to technology every day or there's limited availability, these lesson plans are there to support your staff and to help them bring in some unique and engaging lesson plans into what they're currently teaching. So they're not having to learn something new. They're already familiar with these subject areas, these topic areas that we're using. We're just providing them with new lesson plans that allow them to facilitate learning rather than have to lead learning. And if students are able to lead learning in a digital learning environment, we're all going to be a little bit more successful and provide our teachers with a little bit more prep time and planning time for those hard to teach areas in which they would have to be leading and providing support to students.